to get filled in. Greensboro, Gate City FC started this year, and it looks like they're doing pretty well.
Huh.
They look nice. I'm gonna go watch them once or twice once I move back in a couple weeks.
See, that's what you have to remember as a European fan is that this country is so much bigger and more populated than anybody in Europe, you know. So instead of having those tiny teams playing in the same league, you know, like you talked about as Ajax, but
Yeah.
instead of having that, you have, you know, you have the entire pro league is all in major cities. And then you have huge major cities that are not supported in the pro league, so then they get the lower division. Instead of having somewhere like London that has, you know, 4 top flight, and then they've got 4 development, and then they've got 4 below that, and then 4 below that, they're all spread out. You know, and some teams have, some cities have multiple levels, but right now, you know, it's growing in this country because we have so many large cities that they can support all the different levels. That maybe they're not ready for an MLS franchise yet, but they can, you know, Sacramento, where I'm originally from, is a great example. Capital of California, you know, over 1 million people in the metro area, and because there are already 3 teams in California, they didn't go straight into MLS. But they're having their first year of a lower division team this year, getting huge support, good product on the field. And, I mean, you know, it's growing in this country at astronomical rate because we have so many potential fans. You know, we're not fighting over the small portion of the pie. We have cities that aren't being represented at all. And it's really easy to go in there if there's any sort of soccer presence whatsoever.
And this is I think one of the most underrated aspects of what this World Cup could mean is the clamor for a soccer team in my area. I mean, how many posts have we seen on the MLS subreddit in the last 2 days? Say, all right, I'm a new soccer fan. Where do I go watch? I'm in Milwaukee. I'm in Phoenix. I'm in New Orleans. There's not really a big team near me, and
what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, there's an MLS team relatively close, but 4th division teams are fun too. Support them well enough, they might move up. There's a couple of suitors in Milwaukee. There's a team in New Orleans that our friend of the show's Orangutan goes out to sometimes.
I saw his flare change.
Yeah, it's about that time I gotta change my flare back.
Yeah, I've been waiting, but
it's this is what I hope the result is a bunch of new teams in those 4th, 3rd, 5th divisions prop up, get supported, stick around, provide stability to the lower leagues, and then maybe they develop academies themselves. That's one way to spread the development net. Because it's so fucking hard to cover the entire country of 300 million people and so much area. People will slip through the cracks. Potentially talented soccer players will slip through those cracks, and these little soccer teams that can boost support, boost awareness, can help cover those cracks and help build the national team and help build the support. And we've seen the numbers from this World Cup. A game that started at 4 o'clock on a work day matched to the Portugal game on ESPN. So the 2 biggest soccer games watched in American history are from this World Cup. One of them was on a Sunday. The other one was on a Tuesday work day.
And I want to remind you that a good portion of the country lives on the West Coast where it was 1 o'clock.
Right, exactly.
1 p.m. on a work day.
And it's not to be too, I don't know, fanboyish, but it's optimistic.
It's a great time.
What do you think, Daniel? What are your thoughts about all these words that I'm saying?
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. But do people just want to get off work? I don't know. But I think it seems, though, like everyone around here, at least, has been really into the games. I mean, I'm supposed to be doing research, but, I mean, we like to watch the game while we research. And, maybe we don't do as much data processing as we could, but everyone's totally into it. So, but I think, too, that a lot of real soccer playing among, like, the U.S. youth has to just start on the streets. If people are into it, they'll play. But when I see, like, neighborhoods with typical sort of sports places for the youth to go do whatever they want. It's always like basketball, or there'll be like a recreation center with a pool and some like picnic benches. But I know like where I grew up in the Netherlands, there were always like just little goals set up in parks. And I mean that just always encouraged people to play, because even if you want to, it's sometimes hard just to find somewhere to start, just to go kick a ball around. And I've definitely seen that there's enough interest. So I'm wondering if that's going to start actually happening in the States too, where you're going to see more goals, basically, just goalposts set up for people to play in, because that would totally, well, one, it'd be great for me. I'd totally go play all the time, but it would definitely, I think, shape the sport in a new way, sort of, because I mean that's where you really learn technique too, is playing on the streets where the spaces are small. That's where we got all our great technical players from as a Dutchman. That's where like Robin and Van Persie all got their starts.
And all those Brazilians.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention all of Brazil, essentially.
So you're saying, so the next step then is for little soccer goals to become as ubiquitous in U.S. parks as basketball goals, basketball hoops, baseball diamonds, and
I also think it's got to be a change of kind of not positioning, but it's got to be a change in the way that the sport is viewed at the youth level, because there are a ton of kids that play soccer in America, right up until high school when they get poached to play basketball, football, or baseball.
Yeah, that's true.
There's this huge movement of like kids that just kind of play it. That's what they do on Saturdays. Their parents take them. The coach is a random dad who's never played, who's never coached. One of the big contributors on the MLS subreddit is username Krola. Yeah. And so he's a youth coach and a coach at a couple of different levels, and he is constantly preaching, like, if you want the sport to grow in this country, go be a coach and do it properly. Get the U.S. soccer, breakdowns of these are the drills you should be running for these ages. These are the tactics you should be using for these ages, so that as a country we have a united soccer identity. I think that's one of the things that, other countries are doing. Yeah, go ahead.
Because guys like Josie, when they grew up, they were coached by a random dad.
Totally.
And I personally, Daniel, we should go coach a youth team when I get back to North Carolina. Or we should coach 2 youth teams. We'll play against each other, and I'll win. And
I don't think so, man. I'm gonna find the best youth.
But seriously, that's one of the things that we need. We're talking about the 16-year-olds right now and what our academies can do for them. But if we want to change it as a country, if we want to be a soccer nation, it really has to start younger. We have to take it as more of a sport and a path than a hobby until you get to a different sport.
And you know what? Another thing that has to happen is in those youth levels. It's right now. It's let's win this game. 8-year-olds to 11-year-olds. It's all about winning, and that's not what soccer development at those ages should be about.
Right.
It should be about developing your skills, and then winning just kind of happens. And whatever. What's more important is training, the technique, the understanding of the game, because we have a lot of athletes. Josie's an athlete. DeAndre Yedlin's an athlete. We don't have guys who, if Ari and Robin walked down the street in America, no one would know. I mean, people would understand that he's fit, but they wouldn't pick him out like, oh, that guy's probably a professional athlete, like they would if, like, offensive lineman or like a power forward walked down the street. It's like you look at those guys and you're like, they probably play sports for a living, or they could.
Robin's actually bald too and looks like really old. So it's
right. He kind of looks like Captain Picard. And so you think when I look at him, I think, well, maybe he should go read like some literature or go do some like command a spaceship or something.
Yeah.
But in soccer, it's not about the athleticism. It is a little bit. That can help. It helps Josie. It helps Romelu Lukaku. It helps DeAndre. But what's more important is that thinking ability, that big head of Michael Bradley's isn't just show. It's like there's a good brain in there.
Yeah.
can do soccer shit, and we need to develop that more. And that's where that happens is in the youth level. Is you start thinking about that early.
Yeah.
You start thinking about that tactical stuff instead of the technique so much. The technique is important, but you do that by just learning by doing. The thinking aspect has got to be instilled early, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. One guy who I thought like had that instilled was Freddie Adu, who I always thought was like lined up to be the next big thing, but then he just sort of like disappeared.
I mean, he was 14. What happens with 14? I mean,
Yeah, it was his hobby, and now he's done.
I mean, he played his first professional game when he was 14 years old for DC United, and it was the stupidest thing we could have ever done to him. Because if you look at like the U16 World Cups and the U18 World Cups and the players who dominate those, how often do those guys go on and be like stars in the Champions League? It's very few, honestly. There are exceptions. Julian Green might be one of them. But when you're good at 18, that doesn't mean you're going to be good when you're 19 or when you're good when you're 20. And that's when you're 14, Jesus Christ. You still have – you can hit a peak. You can be better than all the rest of the 14-year-olds, but that doesn't mean shit. Because all those other 14-year-olds are still, people learn at different curves or whatever. So it's funny. Our physics professor Daniel, Dr. Beatty, likes to talk about people learning on different curves and how you peak at different times. People peak at different times. He peaked at 14, and then his learning went like bloop, 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 and then other people they don't peak until they're 17, and everything just clicks.
Yeah.
And for much people, it's much later. I think for me, it was like 2 years ago when I was like, oh, things are starting to make sense now. But then I was embroiled in a thing and had to run away.
Things happen.
Wow. How can we drop that on the podcast? Embroiled in a...
It was with an Arsenal fan. This is fuck Arsenal. Anyway.
Well, listen, guys, I don't have a ton of time. What else do we need to cover? Are we going to talk league at all? Do we want to keep this to a cup-only podcast?
The thing about the league, I'll say right now, Seattle's going to win the Supporter Shield. That's like a given.
Ooh, all right.
You guys are 10 points ahead of everybody else.
Look, I get shit for saying things like that, but I'm a fanboy, so it's not fair. I like hearing unbiased opinions.
Houston's the worst team in the league, which makes me happy. LA's a borderline playoff team, which also makes me happy. And for reasons I'll go into, but not now, because I think I need more MLS voices to bounce off me and tell me I'm wrong. And everybody who got excited about the World Cup these last 2.5 weeks, go find your local soccer team and watch them. Even if they're they might be MLS, they might be NPSL. I don't care. It'll be fun. There'll probably be an atmosphere, and if there's not, see what you can do to create the kind of atmosphere that you saw at bars, at parks in Chicago. By the way, I hope the Chicago Fire are figuring out some way to capitalize on all of those the people who filled fucking Soldier Field on Tuesday.
Let's talk about that for just 1 second, because we've been just inundated with numbers of Nielsen ratings and Watch ESPN, and none of those are counting the insane viewing parties that we've been seeing.
They only got bigger. They got bigger as the tournament went on. It was crazy.
Yeah, the Seattle one was crazy. Now, it wasn't Soldier Field crazy, but we had them all over the city, and you don't see that. Obviously, there's a ton of people watching the Super Bowl, but they all have their own little mini parties, and there's nothing for basketball or baseball or hockey where there are insane groups of people getting together to watch things like that.
There are exceptions. Chapel Hill, Durham. College basketball, though.
Nobody cares, Ian. Nobody cares.
I care. I'm from North Carolina. Daniel, you should care too. You're from...
Nobody outside the Research Triangle cares.
Nah.
But seriously, the both number and size of the watch parties that we saw, like you said, as the tournament went on, are amazing, and we absolutely need to capitalize on that. I actually tweeted Matt Doyle and MLS today because we are getting so many questions on the subreddit about, okay, I watched the World Cup, I need more American soccer, what can I do about it? And the two answers that we give them are go watch your local team and buy MLS Live.
Yep.
And all of those, without a doubt, responded with, okay, we're halfway through the season, why is it full price? And I know that it's still the best deal in sports. I know that because, A, I've bought other sports packages, B, I'm an MLS Live addict, and C, I still think that at half price compared to all the other leagues, it's an amazing deal. But I understand as a brand new fan who's like, wait, it was $65 at the beginning of the year, we're halfway through and it's still $65? That's kind of shitty. So I tweeted them and was like, guys, you got to get either a free week trial or a discounted price happening now. I know that we typically do it after the All-Star break, but that's a month away.
Right.
I mean, there are fans right now that are actually going on Reddit, not just to our soccer, but to our MLS, and saying, I need more of this right now. You know, and we've got to capitalize on those fans because those are me 4 years ago. You know, I was that guy 4 years ago that was just so psyched and then immediately moved to a city with a playoff team and just everything exploded, and now I'm on a goddamn podcast about it. You know, like 4 years later, I'm a fanatic, and those are the people that we have to capitalize to change the way that this country looks at it.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's as good a spot as any to sign off.
Should we do an intro?
You know what I was gonna do? You know what I was gonna do as the intro?
What's that?
You asking me what we should do as the intro.
Oh, good. All right, that works for me. You want me to do my Obama impression again?
Oh yeah, do. Maybe
I'm not
next time. It was good in the moment, but if I make you do it, it's gonna sound bad.
It'll be weird. It was good in the moment.
All right. Good night, RMLS. Go US. Hope to see you for a long time. You guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Daniel. It was fun.
Yeah, man.
You should come.
Outside perspective is huge.
Yeah, it is, and it was really important now because it's easy to get caught up in our own little I guess I'll stop the broadcast now. It's easy to